Alan, we're back. We're ready to rock it. If you're listening in your car, turn it up just a little bit. Actually, you might want to turn it down a little bit because we're about to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, the bourbon's already flowing.
Bourbon flowing. We're ready to go. We got some High West
Cheers.
bourbon. So another potential sponsor to the podcast. We got Steve Beecham in studio. We're going to get to him in a minute, but we got to talk about the big summer plans everybody has.
Which apparently, you'll just indulge us so that we can get to you.
That's right.
Okay.
So thank you.
What are you going to do, Chris?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. Yeah. I actually just got done mapping it out. I'm not doing near as much fun as my buddy who's sending me pictures from Geneva, Switzerland, Jerry. And
I hate him.
I know. I did too. I was so mad. But no, I just plotted out. I'm going Kiowa, Tahoe, Chicago, 3 weeks in a row. Boom, boom, boom.
That's a lot of travel. That doesn't even sound like fun to me.
Actually, the last one, Chicago, is not going to be fun. Well, it is. It's part of our NARI organization. I'm part of the national board of the National Association of the Remodeling Industry, and I'm going up there for a 2-day event to talk to them about what they're doing. One of the big things is we're going to...
Oh, you're the speaker?
No, I'm actually just a listener.
Okay.
But I'm on the board, so I get to, I want to go up there.
You actually can go and keep your mouth shut and be
no chance.
Okay.
No. In fact, I asked them, I said, so since I'm on the board, do I get a crown? And do I get like a scepter? Do at least does somebody get to carry me in on my throne? And somebody said, well, you're not the president. I'm like, okay, well, he can come in after me.
Not yet.
That's what you think, people.
You playing Kiowa?
So
the ocean course?
Not going to play the ocean course because my buddy just got hit by the pickleball flu.
Oh, God.
Oh.
You're going to Kiowa to play pickleball?
Oh, no.
You can do that.
No, hang on. The pickleball flu. This is orthopedic surgeons and resurgence orthopedics. This is their absolute living dream. When old people try to go out there and play a sport that they haven't played ever before and try to play it like they're 22 again. So my buddy tore his calf muscle.
Oh, so he has a pickleball injury? That is like the cone of shame.
It is,
in my opinion.
That's why I said I gave it to him too. You know what? I'm going to use that I'm going to bring a cone down.
Yeah,
and say, Alan said I got to put this on you, and then here's your bell, and you have to walk all through the streets and the whole time go shame, ding, shame, ding. What happened? He got hurt in pickleball. You big pickle. Can you say that?
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah,
yeah, we've been explicit for years now.
I played a little bit of pickleball, and I have to say, the ball doesn't bounce. So what's harder, pickleball or tennis? And everybody says, well, clear tennis. I'm like, all right, let's go out and play pickleball. That ball doesn't bounce up. You have to go down to get it. I'm like, and you big guy, that's a big dig. So you got to get down.
You're not used to things not coming to you, big daddy.
That definitely was one of the things I said too. But the second time I played, my wife broke the paddle, but she took a picture of it, sent it to all her friends, and said, Chris has taken his golf game to the pickleball course because I'm also known for throwing my golf clubs. And I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. But I thought about it.
She threw a paddle and broke it?
Broke it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you proud of her?
I was a little bit. I was like, well, at least we're digging. Yeah. This is what course while we're getting crushed by our daughter 2-on-1.
Oh, no.
We're playing 2 against 1. And we are now we've never beat her. We played 8 different times and I've never beat her.
So you're going to Kiowa not to play pickleball and not to play golf in the middle of summer.
Right.
I'm not jealous yet.
Okay. I got beach. I got fancy restaurants.
Yeah. Hot beach doesn't work for me.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll go play golf. I'm actually going to put Troy out there and put him in like one of those the little wheelie things and say, he can come out here and play off one leg.
It's Troy who has the pickleball. I'm kind of enjoying that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now.
So anyway,
what's the over under on lost balls at Kiowa and the ocean course?
On the ocean course, I had not played that one now going on 15 years because the last time I played, it wasn't windy out. And the reason I know it's not windy out is because the 4 caddy that was playing with me or watching me, I kept hitting the ball all over the yard, man. I was going up and down those stairs off the beaten path the whole time. And he kept saying, and that's not a lot of wind. There's just not a lot of wind. I looked at him. He played golf at College of Charleston. He's a kid. I said, hey, man, I got it. There's not a lot of wind. I suck. He goes, well, I didn't mean it like that. I said, well, I'm taking it like that. I said, don't worry. I'm just banging on you. I'll give you a tip. But it's tough. And how about 17 is a par 3? We had to wait for the alligator to cross the fairway before we could hit.
That's kind of awesome.
That was cool.
Yeah.
And I kept telling myself, do not duff it. Do not duff it. Do not skull it across the fairway. And I actually hit it on the green there.
There you go.
And then 3-putted. So, all right.
Nice,
we get to
nice bogey.
I can make them happen. All right. Let's get to our guest, shall we?
Yes, let's.
All right. We have been introduced to Steve Beecham with not but one person, but by two people saying, you got to have him on your podcast. If anything, it's going to be fun, but he's actually got a lot of knowledge.
Don't put on your fake Southern accent.
I can't. I don't have it.
You just did.
Did I?
You started.
All
That's
right.
awful.
It is. How about, I feel like Brian Kelly going to LSU.
Right.
Y'all, we're going to have a lot of fun. Brian, you're from the Midwest, brother, and I'm from Michigan. I've been accused of being Canadian, so let's not even accuse it. All right, let's get to it, shall we? Steve.
Yes, sir.
You are not from the North. Where are you from?
I'm right here. Like I was telling you earlier, this is my dirt right here. I grew up, went to Roswell High School.
Oh, my.
Yeah, my mom and dad went to high school in DeKalb County. So I've been around my whole life. Right
Actually,
here.
when we asked him off air, where are you from? He goes, right damn here.
Yeah. How about that? So you grew up in Roswell.
Yeah.
And now you live, where do you live now?
I live in downtown Alpharetta.
Yeah. So you didn't go very far.
I didn't go very far at all.
Yeah.
I haven't lived anywhere but Roswell, Alpharetta, and Milton.
Oh, so when you said you bought a house 3 blocks from downtown, it's Alpharetta, not Atlanta. I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
no, Alpharetta. Yeah, so I bought this old house, and everybody around me bulldozed their house. I'm the only guy, so I tell everybody that I live in the slave quarters amongst the plantations. So I got the little bitty house, and everybody's got all these big monster houses all around me.
Which is funny because let's get into what Steve does. Steve, what do you do for a living?
Mortgages. But the problem is all those guys are paying cash. It's not helping my business.
No. So now you were saying you've got a little building in the back, like a garage?
Yeah. So this house was built in 1935. And so I decided to save the house instead of tear it down. And it had an old concrete block building in the back, like a garage, little work area. And so I decided to make that my office. So I fixed it up. It's like a man cave. And it's fantastic. So it's kind of the same sort of thing you got here. Hey, come around back kind of thing, you know, and that's what people do. And it's so close to downtown. I mean, I sold my car. I don't have a car anymore. So I walk downtown for coffee. I walk downtown for lunch. I walk downtown for dinner. So it's kind of cool. My wife's got a car, but I got an old pickup truck. Got an old 66 Chevy pickup truck.
Nice.
With 3 on the tree.
Oh, boy.
Yes, sir.
Does it have a wood bed?
Yes, sir. And it's out front. And I drove that, and there's no air conditioning, so it's not a lot of fun today.
You drove it over here today?
Oh, yeah.
It's 98 degrees out.
Yeah,
We're going to have to go take pictures around that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. But I was, you know, when I got that, I call it the bourbon barn. So when I had a friend of mine call me one time, and he's like, dude, there's this guy out in Austin, Texas that does this like entrepreneurial type school. And he says, it's really weird and it's cool and you're going to love it. And we're going to go out there and take a class. So we went out, and it's called the Wizard Academy. And it's outside of Austin, Texas. And the story is there's this guy that got really famous doing copyright. He started out selling radio ads, and nobody was, and he'd go back to get them to re-up the ad, and nobody like, I didn't sell anything. I paid all this money on the radio and didn't sell anything. So he started rewriting the copy, and he got to be the guy in the country that people would go to write an ad for like a newspaper or magazine or a radio ad. And he got pretty famous, and he did really well. And so he bought this farm or this big piece of property out in Austin. He built this thing. It looks like Harry Potter. It's crazy thing you've ever seen. So this big, huge, tall, like bell tower building that's like 4 or 5 stories out in the middle of nowhere. And he has these classes, and he brings in all these experts from around the country, and he still does some marketing business. But when I was out there, we took the class, and I learned a lot about writing and, you know, basically, you know, how do you get people to look at your, you know, what you're doing, you know, so like kind of like on newspaper, right? That headline's got to get them. And then they said, hey, we're going to start this whiskey sommelier class. And I'm like, really? And he goes, like, we discovered nobody's doing that. So we've got this whole room. We're going to create this vault. And every time somebody comes, they got to bring a whiskey. That's part of the get into the school thing. And so I started taking these classes. There's 5 levels. I got to 4, and then by number 5, they were getting real serious about you got to smell it, and you got to taste it, and they got real serious about it. But I've taken these 4 And so I got into buying
What
whiskey.
are you doing the first 4 classes? That's all you the bourbon.
The first class, the first day before lunch, we probably tasted 100 whiskeys, and they would give these little threesomes, and you would have to start trying to get a palate for, what was Irish whiskey, what was Japanese whiskey, what was bourbon or Scotch or rye. And you started, after a while, you started kind of getting to that. And then I went out as a Scotch drinker and actually came back as a bourbon drinker. So
change of plans, Chris. Screw Kiowa. You got to go to the Wizard Whiskey Academy.
Is it? So
it's still going.
The Wizard Academy was not originally for whiskey; it was for other stuff.
Yeah, and it still is.
We're going. Screw
You
the
go to
bourbon
the
trail.
whiskey
Oh, am I finally invited to something with you, Big Daddy?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Okay.
We're still working on that golf event.
It came out of your mouth and you took it back that quick.
You know what we'll do is we'll go up through the bourbon trail and then make our way out to Austin. That's close.
Yeah.
The Wizard Whiskey Academy.
Yeah,
You go to Hogwarts.
and you stay there on premise. And so if you just look up the Wizard Academy, I'm trying to think of what they've got another name.
A little bit of barbecue, I imagine.
For the school. But anyway, you'll find it or I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating. And so the first time we went out there, the first class, after the class, it was like a 2-day class. The guy said, we got a whiskey guy downstairs. We're going to go down there. We're going to taste his whiskey. It was the Angel's Envy guy. So the story behind Angel's Envy was the guy that was a head distiller for, I think it's Wild Turkey. He retired and his son was in the whiskey business, and they were sitting around at Thanksgiving talking about him retiring. And his son asked him, said, was there ever a blend or a formula that you never made that Wild Turkey? He said, oh yeah, I've got one I just really love. He said, well, why don't we do that? And so that's Angel's Envy. So do you know why it's called Angel's Envy?
No, but I tell us all.
So when you put the whiskey in the barrel, especially in Kentucky, it's gonna evaporate 3 to 5% a year.
And that's a devil's cut, right?
So the stuff that evaporates, they call that the angel's share.
Oh.
That's the angel's share.
And so that stuff that the angels don't get is called Angel's Envy, and it's got the got the wings and stuff on it.
Yeah. So
what's a devil's cut? That's something, isn't it?
No.
Okay. All right.
Not that I know of.
Well,
I knew that was Angel's share.
It's a whiskey that's called a devil's cut, but that's great. You've given me something to go back and study. I don't know that.
That's what
there is something out there, but I know that was called the Angel's share, and Angel's Envy was this wine was so good that the angels wish they had it.
Yeah.
And it's a cool bottle, and it's a good drink too, right? I mean,
it's a
good.
great bourbon. And then after we sat around like we're doing now and we tasted it, and he said, well, y'all, I won't be coming back. And I said, why? He said, we just sold it for $50 million. And they had only had it like 2 years.
And I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need to.
Now they're starting another one though.
There goes Tahoe.
Yeah.
Damn it. All right. So all right.
I want to. Okay.
Academy.
So you have a sommelier. You're a 4th level black belt at the Wizard Academy, whatever that means. So we got the high west here. What are you thinking?
I think it's pretty good. It's blended. So if the whiskey says it's straight, it's at least 2 years old. And so all these are 2-year-old whiskeys, and then they take different bottles and blend it. High West is pretty much likes a rye whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is one of the things I learned in the whiskey school was most whiskeys start, from the farmers in the field. And so out west, everybody grew rye. In the South, we grew corn. They grew malted barley in Scotland. They grow rice, in Japan, blah, 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 potatoes for vodka in Russia. And so that's kind of how so High West has stayed pretty true to staying with a higher rye sort of bourbon, and I think a rye was actually their first one that they did.
It was. Yeah. I was turned on to this by a friend of mine.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. So this was not my maintenance bourbon. So
it's too high a price for that.
Right. So Steve, do you have one of those? Do you have a bourbon you go to first?
Yeah.
And then
it's called Legent.
Legent.
Legent. So story behind that, I got all these whiskey stories, and you tell me when to shut up. But you've got Jim Beam, right? So Jim Beam is 4-year-old, and what people don't know is most of those regular line bourbons like Jim Beam, Wild Turkey, I'm trying to think of one of the other ones.
Four Roses.
They're most of those are 4-year-old bourbons, so they're more than 2 years old, and they still taste pretty good. And people just forgot about them. Everybody's doing something fun and exclusive, but they're great whiskeys. But the guy at Jim Beam was Booker Noe. Booker Noe was a descendant of Jim Beam, and Booker Noe was the distiller. And in the whiskey world, the distiller is the king because you make your whiskey and then all you do with your bourbon, the only thing you do is you put water in there to cut the proof down. So it's really, straight out of the barrel kind of stuff. The rest of the whiskeys in the world, they're all blended whiskeys. And so Suntory a Japanese company bought Jim Beam. And so they got Booker No hooked up with their mastered blender, which is some Japanese guy. And they got together. And so what this guy did was he took the Basil Hayden's. Basil Hayden is an 7-8-year-old Jim Beam. I got to tell you that story too. But this master blender took the Basil Hayden's and put them in rum and sherry barrels and stuff, and really kind of smoothed it out. And it's like $39. It's the best bourbon that I know of. That's a great starter bourbon for somebody.
Legit whiskey.
Legent for two legends. Legit.
How about that? We just picked up a maintenance bourbon. Little nugget here, and I'm telling you, I think that's what this podcast has to be about. I mean, why talk about mortgages? That's
Right. Who cares?
shit.
Who cares? Rates are too high, prices too expensive.
Forget
Let me
that.
tell you about this. Is cool. So when Booker No was doing an 8-year-old bourbon, he was trying to figure out a name for this 8-year-old bourbon, and so the No's were Catholic. And so he started doing some research, and the first guy to bring Catholics to Kentucky was a guy named Basil Hayden. And Basil Hayden brought a bunch of families to Kentucky, bought the first piece of property, and built the first Catholic church in Kentucky. So he named that whiskey Basil Hayden after that
So
guy.
when I don't go to church on Sunday and I have a little Basil Hayden, I went to church. He brought me to church because I'm a Catholic guy.
And when you look at
Sure,
the
God
bottle,
will approve.
it used to have the cloak and the waistband of a priest. It was the label looks like a priest because Basil was a Catholic priest.
Oh my God, that's amazing! All this time, so Basil Hayden that's been in the bag on the course. Because when I went on the boys' trip, every time you did it, you had a double. You had to take a shot, and after
Which would lead to more doubles.
hello,
Yeah.
let me tell you about that trip.
Mhm.
Robert Trent Jones. Friday we played 18, and then we played 18 more. And Chris hadn't played 18 holes like combined before we got there. This is way back in the day. And then we went out drinking at night and had a big old time. And then we had to get up and play. Had to play the Senator anyway. It was a link style course, and I was all over the board. I mean, there were people puking on the first tees, and I held it together. But my first shot into the heather came out double. Second hole into the heather, double. Another drink. Third shot into the heather, double.
Ouch.
And what we were doing shots of? Basil Hayden. And finally, my buddy, and I'll never, to this day, I will always defend him, Eric Leray. Eric said, Chris, I think you can take a couple holes off. I'm like, I said, no, I'll stay true to it. He goes, why don't you just take a couple holes off? And so, long story short is I turned around and shot a 39 on the back nine. But the first nine, I mean, I was just getting myself back together. My hands were shaking all over the place. So anyway, that's how I got introduced to Basil Hayden.
Good
Because
stuff.
that was our shot. Because it was in his bag. I'm like, I'm going to start putting that shit in my bag. But so Basil Hayden.
And you never knew all this time you could have used it for communion.
The whole time.
Yeah.
And I could have drank it before I went to church and when my priest would have said, Chris, have you been drinking? Like, yeah, but I've been drinking what the priest gave me.
That's right.
That's true.
So you went to this class, go out to the Wizard Academy. We're supposed to be talking about mortgage. Screw this. Let's talk about bourbons because you're obviously an aficionado of it.
Well,
So
we should talk a little mortgage, don't you think? Just a tiny bit.
All
I mean,
right.
he
Well,
wrote.
let's talk about bourbons first. It's
Okay,
more fun.
we'll do that.
It is more fun. So you went out there, you tasted them all up. What is the difference between a Japanese whiskey and an American bourbon or whiskey?
The water. So when you drink a Japanese whiskey, the clearness in that whiskey is unbelievable. So the lime supposedly in Kentucky is what really they think gives it that bourbon whatever the kick or extra is. In Japan, the water's so much more cleaner and fresher, and it's more like drinking a water. It's like the Japanese whiskeys to me are like a watered down Scotch.
So you like them, the Japanese whiskeys?
I don't.
Okay, so all right, that's the
I
thing.
like a
Here.
peaty Scotch.
So you like all right, so let's go to talk Scotch for a minute.
Gotcha.
So strike for Steve on Japanese whiskey. Have you ever had Japanese whiskey?
I have got a bottle of Suntory and product in my house.
Yeah. What do you
It
think?
was a gift. Yeah, I really don't like any other whiskey besides bourbon. I
So-
used to like Scotch.
You know what's funny is back when I was in consulting and had the Wall Street Journal and had to learn all those big words, what I do, I always pulled out the one section about lifestyle because the other stuff was, like you said, mumbo jumbo. Mortgage rates are too high as they were in the 90s and prices were too high. So there you go. Guess what? We're back.
Yeah.
So I went to the lifestyle. The lifestyle section said, to be sophisticate, you need to get any vodka you want. Doesn't matter as long as it's not stupid. But you want to go for Scotch because Scotch is what
Men drink.
men,
Gentlemen.
But bourbon is rock gut, and they didn't say it like that in Wall Street Journal. They use like a 25-cent word.
Redneck whiskey.
Yeah, it was no good.
Yeah.
So bourbon in the late 90s was considered just no good. Jack Daniels was the thing that the kids drank out in the fields when they were in high school, allegedly. Definitely not in Michigan, and definitely not in Jackson, Michigan. And if anybody wants to check me on that, good news.
Well,
is
same with
I
me.
grew up in
I
those
drank
Michigan-
Scotch when we're clubbing and stuff in the late 80s and 90s, and that's what we thought we were sophisticated.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we didn't get a Jack and Coke anymore. We got a Scotch and water.
Right. So that was the big thing. And now it seems like bourbon has kind of caught up in the horse race to get with them.
Big time.
So what is your favorite Scotch? You said you like a peaty Scotch.
I like a Lagavulin
Whoa.
peaty Scotch.
So I was going, I mean, the ones I knew because you had to use names, McKellen,
All good stuff.
right. So
Yeah.
you just kind of go down there and you start
Yeah.
picking them off and put them down, and everybody went, "Oh, well,
Do you know
so
why?
rich."
Do you know what makes it peaty? So peat in the old days in Scotland, they didn't have much wood. So what they would do is they would go into the bogs, the low creek areas, and they would dig these mud bricks. And so a peat brick was probably about the size of a concrete block, and people would put the peat bricks in their fireplaces, and that's what they burned for heat, much like we did with coal. They used the peat. And so what would happen is they would take the malted barley out of the field and they would take it into a room, kind of like, I would say, like a big chicken house, if you will, that had screens on it. And during the summer and all, they would they'd have to turn the barley because you have to dry the barley out. And in the summer, they used to call it that the guys that had the pitchforks that were turning the malted barley, what they got was what they called monkey shoulder. You ever had monkey shoulder Scotch?
I've had monkey shoulder
It's
Scotch.
great Scotch.
That's what
It's
that's
called
where
a
it came
monkey
from.
shoulder because it's like you're shoveling and you're flipping and they would get a sore shoulder, and that was called the monkey shoulder. But
It's good too.
when you get to wintertime, they would take the peat and they would put it in fireplaces to heat it up. And they'd close off the sides of it and kind of, make it. And so what happens is peat's a lot kind of like a pine straw smell to me, sort of thing. And so that smokiness from that peat would infiltrate the malted barley, and it would give it that particular taste. And so Islay Scotch is predominantly, most all of them are peaty Scotches. And that's how it gets that smell, is from that bog. But I got to tell you a great story. Can I tell a great story?
I would love a great story.
Please. So
Okay, Chris is in the house.
in the early days, of whiskey, what happened was the farmer.
Just for the listener, by the way, the pores are getting
Yeah.
taller.
We're going to need Uber.
Good thing you don't own a
That's
car.
66 might be saying right here. It might be a fixture on the parking lot. But he starts talking about you got to start drinking more, man.
Yeah. So that's what, and there's a video kind of like this on the internet. But anyway, this was a fascinating story to me, was that the farmers, what they would do is they would make their own whiskey. So, in the South, they'd make it with corn, bourbon whiskey and rye and malted barley. And then early days, they would take that to the local grocery store guy, picture like 7-Eleven on the corner, Jones's grocery store. And they would take it in these gallon jugs, which is kind of like what you see the moonshine with your finger in there and you turn it up. They would take them in these jugs, and they would barter that whiskey for salt or sugar or whatever they needed from the grocery store. Well, there was this guy like in the early 1600s or something, and there's this one guy, and these people would bring these jugs in, and then the next guy would come in and he goes, "Hey, I want some whiskey." And they would have on the whiskey, it would have like, Jones or Smith or Brown or whatever. And what he noticed was certain people liked certain farmers' whiskeys, and he would sell out of those whiskeys. And they were like, "I don't like that Brown son of a gun. I'm not going to buy his whiskeys." So some of his whiskeys wouldn't sell, or he'd have to discount them. So he came up with the idea of getting a 55-gallon drum, we call it drum.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
Barrel.
Yeah, yeah.
Barrel is what word I'm looking. So he got a 55-gallon barrel, and he started pouring everybody's whiskey in this barrel. And then he named the barrel and named the whiskey after himself, and his name was Johnny Walker.
Oh my God, Johnny Walker,
He was the
born in the
first
house.
guy to blend whiskeys, and that's why whiskeys are blended whiskeys. Is that a cool story?
That's a great story.
You know, you can start a business, you can make $1 million, you can scale, or you could talk about idiots that work for you. But that's a cool story, and that's why you listen to this podcast. Huh?
And he was the first guy to do a square bottle, because when he was packing bottles to sell, when they started selling across the country, he came up with the idea that the square bottle could get more in a box than the round bottle. So he's one of the first guys in the world to do glass square bottles.
There you go. Business lesson from drinking. Huh? Tell me you don't learn something when we drink. That's how we started this podcast, Alan. Every time we were,
That's how you got me talked into coming here.
I did.
Yes.
I fed him a ton of beer at a bar, and I said, you know what? We're really smart, especially after like 75 beers. And we need to start a podcast because people need to hear this, because this is really good. And now we just learned that Johnny Walker figured out that you can get more volume in a square bottle than you can in a round bottle, and you can make more for it. Hello.
We had to figure out how to blow square glass back then.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Tell me how you do. That's a great question.
But somebody knew that was going to be a lot of glass bottles, so it was worth their while.
Yeah, I'd blow it. What? All right.
So mortgages.
But really? No. Screw mortgages.
Screw mortgages.
Right. Mortgage rates are too high. Prices are too high. Just sit there and wait. Don't ever buy a house ever again, because the mortgage rates they're going to go back to 2%, right?
No.
Exactly right.
What are
may-
you seeing?
We may never see that. We're right around the 7% range. Some days it's a little lower in the high sixes. Some days it's a little higher. But the deal on the mortgages, I've been doing it 30 something years. When the rate gets to 7.5%, people stop buying. And I've seen that 3 or 4 times in 30 years. When the rate gets out of the 7s and starts getting in the 6s, people start buying. That psychologically it's high, but it's doable. But the 7s is like this, I don't know, like this cloudy spot, And
All right,
that's
fine,
where
we'll
we've
talk
been
mortgages.
stuck. We've been stuck there for several months.
Fine. Let's talk mortgages.
Look at that dirty look you're giving me.
Well, I want to talk more liquor, but this is more
no, we'll
interesting.
get back to liquor,
No,
but
all right,
he
we'll get back
drove
to
all the way over here in that
All right,
cool truck.
let's talk, because this perspective is exactly what I wanted people to hear, because and we're both, as we've been called, seasoned, not old. And we've seen a lot of these cycles, and you're right, the 2 and 3% in our lifetime, probably not, guys. And that's he hit on exactly what I was telling people is, and I'm seeing the same. If it's in the 7s, people don't buy, but if I can get 6 3/4
all day long,
you know what? I guess I got
It's
to
just
do it.
your expectations have changed.
Right.
And
So
so
you got
suddenly,
tolerated.
yeah. So suddenly 6 3/4 sounds great compared to 7.5, which it is better, but you just got to get used to the fact that that's the new normal.
I want his opinion on this, because that's what I've been telling people, but because that's what I remember. I mean, what was my first house that I actually bought was in the late 90s. And I'll never forget this. My wife and I were getting married. She had a house, so she came with money. And I was a poor college kid who came with
Well done, Chris.
I did.
Totally married up.
Well, she wouldn't tell me till the end either. I mean, it was like literally, she would never tell me she had her own house. But when we went to buy,
how do you not know that?
I know.
Yeah,
we need to get Nicole on the podcast. We got to find out a little bit more about this.
This chick wouldn't crack a bit. No. So her dad saw the late 70s, and so did my parents. And the 70s in Michigan were horrible because the auto industry got.
Anytime there's a recession, Michigan gets hit the hardest.
And it was hit really hard. Yeah. And so he did a land contract back in the day at 17%. And so he told Nicole, my wife, she said, whatever you do, you make sure it's a 30-year fixed. And at the time, in the late 90s, the 30-year fix was going to run like 7.5. So I bought it down and went on a 7-1 arm. And I told her, I said, don't ever tell your dad. So every time we go back home for Christmas, he goes, you guys did a 30-year fix. I'm like, oh, absolutely, Nick, all day long. I lied to my father-in-law.
And you got a chance to refi out of that too.
I did too. And
Yeah.
so I got lucky, right? Because
Yeah.
exactly what happened was I was betting on that coming down.
And you were
It
right.
did, and refied out of it. And yeah, thank you. See, but
Yeah.
you think I can go tell him I was right?
Yeah.
No,
Well, yeah, I would.
no, yeah, you don't know this guy. It ain't gonna happen. He's the one who taught me. My dad and I worked on houses. That's how I got in the home building business and the remodeling business. But my father-in-law is the true expert in all things houses. He is just amazing. I brought him down here to work on electrical projects for me that we were doing here in Atlanta. So he's an amazing dude. But anyway, back to the mortgage rates and you. All right, so it's up in the 7s. Does it come down to the 6s?
Yeah, big time.
When?
I think we're going to kind of coast along here. We might see little bitty baby drops, maybe an 1/8 every couple months or so. But it's not going to. I don't think it's going to be big. But I think
You think the
Well-
election's going to have anything to do with
I
that?
just read a great article today, and it said it really doesn't move the needle at all. It makes November a bad real estate sales month because people are all worried and don't know what it's going to happen. So there's no closings in November because in October, people are all worried about what's going to happen because most elections are fairly close. You know, it's not just a total blowout all the time. And so statistics say that activity picks up after an election,
So
regardless of who wins.
Regardless of who wins, which
Yeah.
is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
well, let's just talk it like this.
Well, yeah, right
So-
now we're in this cloud, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, do we get Democrat? Do we get Republican? And people are,
But if you're
We're-
smart enough and you know nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change anyway, and we're going to go back to normal, why would we stop now?
well,
Nothing's
but
going to change.
I call it like we're in this really funky period right now. And I call it's like this cloud comes in. It's like it's like you can go back 2 weeks ago, my phone rang off the hook for about 3 or 4 days and then it didn't. And then then it would go, it's like nobody'd call. And then all of a sudden it'd ring for 2 or 3 days. It's almost like people are listening to the news or what's being put out. And all of a sudden they get real scared and they don't do anything. And then maybe something comes out and they go, okay, we're going to live. We're not going to die. And then all of a sudden they go buy something. It's the weirdest thing. It's like these little clouds come in and everybody gets scared and then it gets a sunny day again.
The consumer psychology is so fascinating to me. It's like those little school of tiny little fish that all just sort of flash one way and another
Yeah.
together. And when I had my retail store, it's like nobody's been in here all day, and then at 2:00,
Boom.
five people walk in, and we all think we're special and different. And I don't know. It's
Well-
really weird.
We're all sitting here, and one of the things you always knew, and you knew this at Enterprise, I knew this back in my consulting days, uncertain money doesn't spend. And right now,
That's what's
everybody
going
is
on.
waiting for an uncertainty. And they want to hear uncertainty, and they're hearing it, right? And right now, here, especially in the U.S., because as well, Steve doesn't know this, but we are broadcasted in 15 continents, and of course, universally now.
A couple of galaxies.
Yeah, we're actually getting streamed way out there. So, but here in the
We
U.S.,
may be the first thing that extraterrestrial hears.
That's
Right.
awesome.
so that's us. I don't. Just one of those things.
Yeah.
But we're uncertain. Money doesn't
I don't
spend.
take that lightly, though, Chris.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, okay.
Because in fact, a few more bourbons, you're really going to start thinking extraterrestrial.
I will.
So, but here's the thing, and I've seen that too. We've all been in business for a long time, and owned our own business now, Alan and I, and you've done it for quite a while as well. Is that every election cycle, everybody stops, and then after it's over, you're like, "Hey, my guy won. I'm going to spend. Oh, my guy didn't win. Well, shit, I still got to do something."
Right.
So
But
it's
then
just
you at least know where you're headed, sort of in your mind, okay, I know it's going to look like this a little bit.
Right. And at the end of the day, if you're a Democrat or Republican, and I've been through, as a business owner, I've been through a lot of Democratic cycles. Guess what, guys? It hasn't impacted me negatively because that's DC and I'm in Atlanta. I mean, Main Street happens. Don't let these guys get in your head, man. You got to get out of it because you can't change all that shit that's going on up there. And I don't care. We all think we can. And we've talked about it. Alan and I have Alan's more active in politics than I am, but he knows I'm pretty active here locally, but we can impact locally. We can't impact nationally. That's just not who we are.
Right.
Maybe we can with this podcast, but
I don't know. Don't sell yourself short, Big Daddy.
Let's go. But back to this. So
Hey,
people aren't going to
let's
spend.
talk about that. That's a huge thing that people don't do for their business is use politics as a way to grow their business. Have you ever thought about that?
That's a good one.
So let me give you an example. Let's say you live in our town and you want to and you know somebody running for city council. So if you're in a small business, one of the best, what you need to do is you need to prospect, you need to meet new people, right? Because I can't spend money with you if I don't know you exist. So I tell small businesses all the time that if you get involved in really, really local politics, because basically it's nonpartisan, it's usually, it's your neighbor, it's a guy you know from, I don't know, your Rotary Club or the chamber or your church.
HOA.
All
Yeah.
right. And you think he's a good guy or good gal. And so you go to that person and say, how can I help you? So if you're running for local office, the two things you've got to do is one is you got to shake as many hands and kiss as many babies as you can, right? You need to meet as many people as you can. And then the second thing you need is you need some money because you need to pay for some yard signs and you got to do some mailers. So I'm just talking about, let's just say a city council seat. And those guys and girls have got to raise anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to compete in a local city council race around here. Some cases they spend up to $40,000, $50,000. If they don't really have a serious opponent, they might get by for $5,000. But anyway, for a lot of people running for office, that's not really something they always have in their back pocket. So you go to that person, you say, "Let me help you." And they will just bow at your feet. Please help me. So one of the easiest things you can do is you can say, why don't I throw a party for you at my house? I'll introduce my neighbors. I'll introduce my friends. I'll introduce my people from my church or my country club. Come over to my house. And I'm just going to ask all my buddies to come meet you because I like you and you're running for city council. Well, when you do that, it's a huge bonus for this particular person that's running. So you get all your friends and they come over. So two things happens. One is they go, oh, Steve's connected. He knows this person, right?
Ah, look at Steve. Not only does he know bourbon and all where it came from,
He knows how
and
to
why-
work it.
but he knows real people who are really significant because he's city council guy.
Yeah. So then you have your friends give them some money. Hey, if you would, I like Scott. He's running for city council. If you'd write him a check, if it's $50, $100, whatever you feel inclined, we need to help him get some yard signs, blah, blah, blah. So that city councilman walks away from your party with $2,000, let's say, in his pocket, and they meet 30 new people. Now what happens is that person now will run into somebody else that says, I'll throw a party for you. Because there's people that are in that political process that understand the power of that. And that's kind of how that works, right? So different people in the community will throw a party. Well, guess what? You now get an invitation to that party. So now you get to go to that party at Johnny's house on the other side of town, and you don't know Johnny and you don't know any of Johnny's neighbors, but now all of a sudden you're at this party. Well, guess what? The guy running for city council, you're his favorite person because you just put money in his pocket and introduced him to 30 new people. So he's going to introduce you to everybody in the room. So the very best way to grow your business is to get involved in local politics.
Hot damn, we just heard a hot take right there.
Gold
Alan,
nugget, mic
you
drop.
and I have been sitting there talking about networking all the time and doing this way, but he's right. I had a city councilman here in Johns Creek. He was a friend of mine, and I never threw a party for him. And right now, I'm sitting there going, Steve Broadbent, I did you wrong.
Steve Broadbent was a good guy.
And he was a
He ran
great
Fulton
guy.
County, didn't he?
He was a Johns Creek city councilman.
So let me tell you how crazy this is. So on the way over here today, this buddy of mine texted me and asked me if I know this guy. And I text him back. I go, no, why? He goes, well, he is on a advisory committee for green space for one of the cities here or local cities. I don't want to mention any names. And I said, well, I know the mayor of that city. And so he's like, this guy, even though he lives here locally in the Atlanta area, owns a piece of property in Delaware on a corner. And my friend is opening up a country club for shooting, for pistols and rifle ranges with lockers. It's first class. And he wants to put a sign on this guy's property in Delaware to say, turn right here to go to ABC Gun Club. And he knows I live in Atlanta. And so he called me, my friend from Delaware calls me in Atlanta and wants to know if I know this guy. And so I told him, no, I knew somebody that would. So I thought maybe you would know the guy, Beach. I said, no, but I know the mayor. So I text the mayor and said, hey, I need John Smith's info for a friend of mine. And he's already sent that back to me. I've already sent it to that guy. Now it's already back to Delaware.
Welcome to how business happens right there.
Is that crazy?
It is, right? We always talk about know your numbers, have a plan, do this. But what Steve's doing is working the network. And we do talk about this. So we're talking about networking in a different way. And I know, Steve, you're also involved in Rotary here, which is a great give back organization that gets you involved in that. So, but that's how it works. And that's a gold nugget right there. Get involved and look, because guys, for many of us, you're not going to affect who the president is. I don't care. And you're definitely not going to change DC, because we've had
but it starts somewhere. So city council people end up going to the state house. Sometimes they end up getting in positions in the state government. Next thing you know, they're in Washington.
100%.
And the thing that blows me away is in local politics. So here we are, Johns Creek, Georgia. Was it the 10th largest city in Georgia? It's the wealthiest city in Georgia.
wealthiest city. Oh, yeah.
And the difference between you getting elected and not getting elected is a couple hundred votes.
Oh, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing.
It's nothing. But then here's the cool thing. So like the guy that was, do you remember Tom? He was our U.S. rep, but he was the guy, Dr. Tom Price.
Yes.
Tom Price, yeah.
Tom Price. So Tom Price, I knew Tom Price when he was just an old doctor, and he was in the Rotary Club, and I was in the Rotary Club, and I probably went to him for some orthopedic something I had at some point in time. But I knew him as a friend, and then I helped him on a couple, whenever a lot of people forget, if you're in the state house or the U.S. house, you got to run every 2 years. It's constant. It's a constant. You're campaigning all the time. So, but the cool thing about it is that when my kids were like 10, 12, and 14, my wife said, we got to do that DC trip. We got to take them up there. When we were kids, we used to ride the bus up and, we'd learn about all that. So I called Tom. I said, Tom, I'm coming up. He said, dude, call this guy. This is my chief of staff. Tell me when you're going to be here. Well, we show up. This guy gives us a one-on-one tour all the way through the Capitol. We go see Tom in his office. We get to talk to Tom. Tom says, would you like a flag flown over the U.S. Capitol? I'm like, yeah. So we get a flag that's flown over the U.S. Capitol. Tom says, would you like to go visit the White House? We said, yes. So we get a full tour of the White House.
Really?
All because I had a couple parties for Tom.
How about that?
In Alpharetta, Georgia.
Man, we're dropping some serious nuggets right here. That's mind-blowing for a lot of people right now. You know what?
They're afraid of politics.
I'm going to stop it right here. You're going to have to come back and listen to the next episode. Go. I'm bringing it back.
He just mic dropped, didn't he?
He did. We're out of here.
All right,
everybody. You just learned something. Go marinate on that. And you know what? Next episode's coming back out, and we're bringing him right back, because I'm not letting him go. But you guys got to wait for another week. And if you're binge listening to us, go out and check us out. Because remember, we're on YouTube, we're on podcast. The Small Business Safari is making it happen. 5%, man. We're in the top 5. Woo! Let's go. All right, we're out of here. Let's rock it.